Hello and welcome, Sparrow.
Hi, Jen. Nice to meet you in person.
Yes, I love how we all meet each other in person over Zoom.
I know. Well, as close to in person as we can get for now, but I'm willing to travel.
Right? It is way cheaper. I mean, like, it's cool because it connects all of us around the world, and you feel like you're your next door neighbor sometimes.
Yeah, you get to
Right.
know each other.
It sure is. Well, cool. Can you introduce yourself a little bit to those who are listening and watching? Who
Yeah.
you are, where you live?
Okay. So my name is Sparrow Daenitz. I live in Meridian, Idaho. We've lived here about 4 years, moved here from California. I've lived in a lot of other places too. I number 8 of 11 children.
That's a
Um,
full house.
hmm And it wasn't until I moved to Idaho that I knew I was an artist. I mean, I knew I could write and stuff, but I'll tell you more about the story as we go. So
I'm excited because that's our feature today is your story, and you have art to go
yeah,
with it. So that's
yeah.
exciting. And how did you get into, well, that's probably part of your story is how you realized you could paint. Yeah.
I started going to Vineyard Boise, and Jessie Nilo had started the Vine Arts ministry there. And she was one of the first people I connected with. I told her, I can't even draw a stick figure. Next thing you know, here I am, so there's a whole lot more to the story, but that's how I started doing visual art. I was always a writer, but I
Hmm.
started doing visual art.
Yeah. So the first experience really with visual art was through church.
Well, no, my first experience with visual arts was through a paint and sip with my sister in California. But
Okay.
my first experience of recognizing myself as an artist was through fine arts.
Okay. That's good to clarify.
Mhm.
Yeah. Excellent. And then what do you do?
Oh, I'm retired. I do art ministry. I didn't know I had been doing it all along before I ever got connected to Jessie and, learning new techniques and honing in my skills through taking her Foundations of Art course and stuff. So the way I started out doing art ministry, if that's what you want to call it, was I used to go to a church in San Diego where I was living. I used to go on a monthly basis to Ensenada, Mexico, to a very, very poor village, a colony that was built at first close to the prison because so many of the women have men in prison and they wanted to be closer.
Mhm.
Really crime ridden, really poor, and all that. The very first time I went with that team, it's usually geared towards like a Sunday school type situation for the kids, right?
Sure.
And I just noticed this deep, deep, deep sadness in the women's eyes.
Mm.
And I recognize that sadness because that's how mine used to look. I'll tell that story through my paintings. So the next time I came and we went once a month, I brought a very inexpensive, very easy craft that anybody could do. And they had so, so much fun. Pretty soon I was doing it every now and then. Then pretty soon it was, just like a change of season or a holiday. And then pretty soon it just became a full-on ministry. When I first started doing it, there was maybe 5, 6 women. By the time I left there several years later, when I moved away, there was about 25 women coming every time.
Wow.
So because I was doing it on a regular basis, Pinterest became my best friend, YouTube became my best friend, self-taught through those venues how to do a lot of different things. And that's when I started doing scripture-based mixed medium. Scrapbooking is one of my biggest loves that I first started doing visually before I, considered it an art. And so I even helped them do their own. I just did everything, and like it gets really hot over there. So for Mother's Day, I bought a bunch of straw hats and fake flowers and ribbons and just anything to make them feel happy. And a lot of them, gosh, they're just natural born artists. They take recycled stuff, junk that's where they're living.
Isn't that a powerful thought and message of we can take junk and we can make it beautiful?
Yeah, and we do that a lot of times in our art ministry workshops that we do through the church, what they call junk journals or whatever. We say, bring your scraps from the house. We'll show you how to make it nice. And we incorporate that. So for me, when I'm doing, because that was a church-based thing, we went ahead and did mostly scripture-based art. I taught them a lot of mixed medium techniques and all kinds of stuff, pottery, you name it, we did it. So I brought that with me to Idaho, and then I connected with Jessie and realized, gosh, even with the kids at a youth center that I used to volunteer out there in San Diego, I'd been doing it all along. And some of those
kept
teens,
growing, and then you had an official name to give it.
I didn't call it anything. I just did it because it was fun,
Right.
And So a lot of those teens that I mentored and stuff through a teen center we're still friends. They're like in their 20s and stuff now, you know, and getting married, all kinds of stuff. So
Yeah, it really built some deep connections
yeah,
as you got together and created. I think we forget how much it doesn't have to sound serious. It doesn't have to be super formatted to get together and play with art supplies and
yeah,
talk about scripture. Like that is ministry, that is healing work,
yeah,
even
yeah.
if it doesn't have an official title
I know. That's what now
or
I
a
have.
curriculum. Or,
I was an art minister before I knew it.
yeah.
Just using it to just to give them something to look forward to and sometimes dig deeper, sometimes not. Like you say, sometimes you're just having fun because it's a holiday and you want to paint Halloween stuff, you know, whatever.
Yeah.
So
Celebrate the people that are there and be with them in the moment.
I often invite people to my home. I'm like, hey, we're having a play day. Come on over.
Yeah.
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 So,
And all of your family, you're number 8 of 11, you said?
my eldest sister died when she was 68. I'm going to be 68 in April, so I'm the age she was. She had early onset Alzheimer's and she died from complications of that. That's a whole nother story, Jen.
That is a whole nother story. That sounds like a hard story.
Whole nother story of the many blessings that I found in God in my ability and the fact that he chose me to be one of her caregivers, because I don't have that great of a past history of the way I lived my younger life. And I just saw all the blessings. I saw God in everything taking care of her. I saw him everywhere. So that's another story. My friend said, you cannot die until you write these stories. I said, well, if I don't write them, then I'll never die.
Somewhere like those stories need to be told, and don't think that you're gonna like get the axe as soon as they're told. There's probably more stories after that to come.
Just do it by video with pictures and stuff. I've been getting into that. I'll send you later the link to my YouTube channel.
Oh yes, that will be exciting to see. But and I love that your theme for today, and I know that you have a story to tell, and we're gonna jump into that really quick, but a time for every season.
Yes.
And these seasons, you know, you talked briefly about your sister. Most people would dread that season. They would resist and fight that season. But once you are in it, you're like, there's so many blessings in this season.
And that's why I do want to write that story and taking care of my mom and then my daughter-in-law that died of cancer and things like that, because you can look at it as a burden or a blessing. And if you look at it as a blessing, whether you believe in God or not, if you look at it as a privilege and a blessing, thank God. I remember giving her a shower, thanking God that it was me and not some pervert at a facility giving her a shower. You see what I'm saying?
Wow.
If you look for the positive attitude in every situation, it makes it easier and you just feel like blessed that God chose you to be a part of it. Just like this, what we're doing right now, God chose us to be a part of this.
Yeah. Well, cool. Anything else you want to say before you jump into sharing your story and your art?
No, we're not always in a Christian atmosphere. So I'm real cognizant of that, especially if you're working at a facility that's funded by the government. You're not supposed to talk about God and everything. So there's also that song, the birds sing it. Turn, turn, turn. Do you remember that song? To everything there is a season.
Yes.
So what I'm going to do today is there's 3 pieces of art that I created based on Ecclesiastes 3:4. A time to weep, a time to seek, and a time to dance. So that's where I'm going to start. My childhood was happy. I'm the younger half of like 2 generations. Growing up, happy, wild, feet hit the ground, out the door, little girl, didn't care about the grown-up world, wasn't concerned with it. Grew up in a Mexican family. We're Mexican and Indian. And my mom was beautiful. My father was handsome. My father was a musician. My mom took really good care of us, not a care in the world. Nothing. It was fabulous, and always playmates and, you know, your natural playmates. So that remained until, let's see, in 4th grade, I got put into parochial school, and that was all good too. But as an adolescent, the first most traumatic one, there's 2 traumatic events I'm going to tell you about in this story. So happy, happy, happy little girl. Get to the age about 12. My parents are getting in a huge fight. Next thing you know, they're getting a divorce. Now, there's stories I know that this was going on all the time, but I didn't know it as a little girl. You don't pay attention to grown-up stuff. So we were brokenhearted. My sisters and I, there was 5 of us younger ones. And there was this song that Cher sang, and it was all about, you better sit down, kids. I've got something to say. your mother is staying and I'm going away. And so it's the dad telling his kids that they're getting a divorce. We sat there and cried and cried and cried and cried. So adolescence is kind of a hard time. You're kind of on the cusp anyway of still being a little girl, but trying to figure out these new things you're hearing and learning and stuff. So
Yeah.
that was really hard. My parents were really strict. My dad, I won't tell all the gory details, but became very violent. And I know now he was violent throughout their marriage, but I just never saw it. But he was not going to let my mom raise his kids without him because he knew that she wouldn't be strong enough and, you know, keep us in line and all that kind of stuff. So we had to go into hiding a couple of times. You hear about those stories where a man kills his entire family because they're losing control of it. He'd
Yeah.
rather everybody be dead. So we had to go into hiding a couple of times from that. So all that big turmoil was going on. Add to that, my mother was very young when they got married and she had children, and she went way off the deep end. I had this beautiful mom that didn't drink, didn't smoke, didn't even wear pants, even wore house dresses when she cleaned the house. Okay. All of a sudden, here she is wearing a wig, smoking cigarettes, going out to bars with my ex-sister-in-law, wearing the little shorts, back then were really short, and white go-go boots. This was my mom. This was a different person.
Yeah,
My dad was a
completely.
crazy person I didn't recognize, who I before was my prince. So that was going on. We had to go into hiding. There was an event where my brother-in-law, my dad had a really thriving business. He was an excellent provider and a complicated man because I loved him to death, but then I hated him, you know? So my brother-in-law called and he said, you guys better get out of there. He's coming with a gun. So for whatever reason, my sister Pat and I were home on that day. And my dad came in, he didn't pull out a gun or anything, but he threw my mother against the refrigerator and started to choke her. So we saw this.
Yeah.
Okay, so I'm growing up in Southern California. I'm 12, 13, 14 years old while all this is going on. I had older brothers and sisters. I was exposed to way too many things at such a young age. The older kids forgot how young I was.
Oh, sure.
It was a drug culture, smoking marijuana, drinking and all that. And, you know, and it didn't matter. You were a straight A student and I was a good student at school. I loved school. It didn't matter. Whereas before, the lines were clearer on who you could hang out with and who you couldn't. I also have sisters. I have a sister that's 3 years older than me. And she would take me with her because she knew my mom would let her go if I was with her. You see what I'm saying?
Yeah.
So I got exposed to things I had no business being exposed to and being taken advantage of. So all that happens. And I forgot to backtrack a little bit. I was born wild. Obedience was not in my vocabulary. Not that I was a rebel. I just always was very impulsive. If something looked fun, I went for it. I didn't think of consequences. I didn't think normal kids would say, well, I better not. My mom's going to spank me or whatever. We survived all the beatings. You know, I mean, by today's standards, I am not emotionally scarred by the way we got punished, but I can guarantee you by today's standards, we would have been removed from the home. It only hurt physically, okay, to me. And it's not like I didn't deserve all but one of those, you know. And
I knew I had it coming, so.
Well, it kind of backfired too, though, and I'll tell you why in a minute. So,
Yeah.
I would wear shorts, my legs would be all black and blue, and I wanted people to feel sorry for me. They go, what happened to your legs? My mom, she used to whip us with a rubber hose. I go, my mom, well, what'd you do? They didn't feel sorry for me. They go, well, what did you do?
Oh, sign of the times.
That didn't work. So anyway, I had a lot of free time, unsupervised. We pretty much were raising ourselves on our own. Dad didn't stay in the picture much. He came to visit us a couple times, and my dad had a lot of money and he found a way to not give my mom money. So everything changed in our life. So I was wild anyway. Me and my best friend and everybody in that neighborhood hitchhiked to the beach or wherever, Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, all those things, right? So my best friend Kathy and I, we went hitchhiking and we went to Sunset Boulevard in Hollywood, and we were coming home and ran into some people that we knew, went to their party. And this is where I say it backfired, because if I was a half hour late coming home, or 3 hours late, I got the same beating. So in my sick mind, I'm like, well, I'm late now, I might as well stay, right?
Absolutely.
We ended up spending the night at that house, and they were going to give us a ride home the next day. Oh, well, yeah, I forgot to show you this. Okay, so I got to back up a little bit. When my parents got the divorce, that was when the time to weep started.
For those who might just be listening, the black and white photo, butterfly, a clock, a flower, and then the words "a time to weep," and it's very much black and white.
It's actually a picture of me, and there's a teardrop if you can't see it. I'm going to back up and then I'll tell you how I came with that picture. So I'm back to coming home from that party, and they were taking us home. And all of a sudden they stop at like a convenience store, you know, oh, we got to get some cigarettes. And now looking back, I know what really happened, but what they said, I saw them, you know, talking to some guys, and I'm going to call him Dennis. I believe that was the guy's name. He says, oh, I forgot I have this appointment or a court thing or whatever. So our friends are going to take you home. Okay. So Jen, I can tell you now that looking back, there was an exchange of money with them. I figured they were getting money for cigarettes or selling drugs or whatever. I didn't think anything. Yeah. I'm 14. Kathy was 16. They had a 2-door old car, like one of those old 1940s cars with just 2 doors. And we're in the back. And these older guys, to me, now you forget, I'm 14. So if they could have been 18 and they were ancient to me, you know, they're probably 30s, whatever. They were old.
Yeah.
So we're in the back and they're going, oh, you girls. And we weren't that far from my house, Jen. We were not. I knew exactly where I was. We were right by the rival high school. Mm-hmm. So they're like trying to talk us into going to this party. We're like, no, we want to get home. We got to get home. We got to get home. Well, stupid me. I was naive. I'm like, you know, they started saying stuff and I'm like, hey, you might as well just take us home because we're both virgins. Well, now I know better. I would never say that again. Okay.
But you were only 14.
I was 14. What the heck did I know, you know? And so they take us to this neighborhood known as the One Ways because all the streets were one way and it was not a good neighborhood. It was not a good neighborhood. And they get us out of the car and they take us to this front door and the door opens. And Jennifer, I was like freaked out. It's like all these biker men were in there. Whoa. And there was this one guy, there's 2 names that I remember. One was at the sitting closest to the door. And he goes, oh, you want some whiskey? We're like, no. We want to go home. We want to go home. And his name was RC because he liked RC Cola. That was a Coca-Cola from back then. This was in 1969, by the way. Okay. So we're looking around scared to death. Well, then I saw a woman and I thought, oh gosh, I felt safe because to me, moms take care of kids, right? No matter whose kids they are.
Right, of course.
That's what I thought. Okay. So as the time goes on and we're trying not to drink or take anything, although they're shoving some whiskey in my mouth and all that kind of stuff, the lady takes us to this room and started showing us sexual things that she wanted us to do to her boyfriend because she wasn't in the mood. Now, neither one of us were sexually active. We're 14 and 16 years old and raised in the Catholic school. I was going to stay that way till I got married. I can't remember why we were in the front room, but there was a bunch of people standing around. And let me show you if you can see this. When I'm scared, this is me. Don't blink, don't breathe, don't move. Maybe you'll become invisible, right?
Right.
So
freeze.
So
freeze, camouflage, blend in.
Yeah. I'm searching for Kathy and our eyes locked. And right at that very moment, we knew exactly what was going to happen. We knew it without a doubt. Mm-hmm. And we just had our eyes were just like, oh my gosh. So then we started taking anything they gave us, drinking anything they gave us, because we didn't want to live through that. I think that's why I'm not completely flipped out as a person, because I wasn't conscious through most of it. The next day, I feel somebody pulling my foot off of a bed. I had no clothes on, and my area was so painful, so painful. So this man's dragging me out and he goes, oh, time for some more fun. Well, this is the reason I remember another name. There was a guy, they called him Rico because he was Puerto Rican and he was a big guy. And he said, leave her alone. They've had enough. That's enough. That's enough. And so I ran and I locked myself in the bathroom and they broke out in a fight. And I guess Rico pulled the knife. And so then I was left alone from that other guy. And Rico said, you can come out now. And I was able to put some clothes on. And I didn't know where Kathy was. I'm like, where's Kathy? Where's Kathy? I hear this big ruckus outside. Okay, so you saw how I act when I'm scared. I don't move, I don't breathe, I don't talk. I wasn't saying anything at that time anymore. So Kathy, on the other hand, was fighting mad. So I'm only 5 foot tall now. So back then I was about 4'11" or something. So I'm tiny, and I probably weighed about 100 pounds, 105, because I used to think I was fat if I weighed more than 105. So they dragged Kathy in, and she was all beat up because she was mouthing off to him. She was ticked off. So they beat her up, and they said, you're going to leave here. But if you call and tell the cops where they are, we know where you girls live, and we're going to burn your houses down with everybody in it. We didn't have a reason not to believe them, because one, the guys that sold us to them knew where we lived. They were so-called friends of my older sister. Okay.
Yeah.
Two, we weren't that far from our house. My mom shopped at the market down the street. So they made her leave. I don't know if she was going to get me saved or what. In the meantime, Rico took me to another house. I'm thinking, oh, good. Well, there was no more sexual attacks or anything, but I became like a little slave. There was a couple there, and again, a mom with 2 kids. I had to clean and cook and all that, but there was no more other stuff. But I still could barely walk. They would take me to stores and make me steal things, and I would try to get caught so I could get rescued. So I don't remember the exact amount of days. It wasn't like months or anything like that, but I heard them talking. And so this is just to show you, sex trafficking was going on way back then, because I heard them saying they were going to get me a fake ID. They were going to, make it look like I was 18, 19 years old. I was 14 and looked 12 or 10. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Other than starting them developing, my face and all that, I looked really younger than I was. So unfortunately, that was one of the alluring things to them, young girls.
Absolutely.
So I heard them, they were going to ship me out to another state. So at this other house, which wasn't that far from the first house, I was sleeping on the couch, and it was late at night, and I hear bang, bang, bang on the glass windows and flashlights shining in. And my first thought was, oh no, they're back. Well, it was the police. After however many days, she finally called her dad and told him, and she knew exactly where I was, and she was able to lead the police there. So they come in, and victim blaming still makes me mad. I'm 14 years old. Here's all these guys, and they're like, oh, you like this one, don't you? It's like, oh. So anyways, take me into protective custody, call my parents. My dad, you have to realize, he reacts with anger when things happen. And at the time, so I was real honest. Hey, I had been at a party, I had been drinking. This is what happened. This is what happened. I didn't lie about any of my part of it. They let me out to my parents because I wrote everything honestly on the paper.
Yeah.
My dad comes up and bam, with his fist. This is all your fault. My fault, because I was in the wrong place at the wrong time. So there was this little old man there. To me, he was old. I don't know. And he goes, I don't know what
25.
Yeah, I know. He was probably 25. Yeah, ancient. I don't know what she did, but he shouldn't have done that to her. He wanted to fight my dad. One of my brothers there, he's pulling the 2 men apart and all this kind of stuff.
Wow.
So they finally released me to my parents. My mom gets me to the hospital, and they said, she's as if she just had a child. That's how I looked down there, all torn up. And fortunately,
wow.
no diseases, no pregnancy, none of that. So my mom takes me to see the DA to decide if they can press charges or not. And he pretty much convinced her that because I could only identify a few of them, and I couldn't really tell which ones had or had not done anything to me.
Oh no.
That chances are, he goes, and do you want to put her up there? Because everything's going to come out that she had been drinking, that she had been doing this and doing that and hitchhiking. And basically, he goes, they're going to make it look like it was her fault that she asked for it. My mom said, no. She says, I'm not going to make her go through that. And so Kathy's parents were ticked off about that because I wasn't going to testify to anything. and they moved away and I never heard from her again. I've always wondered what happened to her. In the
Yeah.
meantime, back then you didn't go to therapy. You didn't get help. You just acted like it never happened.
Mm-hmm.
So I wasn't even allowed to call my best friend. She's about a year older than me, and talk to her. And if anybody mentioned, I would just break out in tears. And that's how I lived. And so for the next 15 years, that's why I'm going to bring this picture up again. If you look,
Yeah.
I have a lot of makeup on. See the
Mhm.
eyes?
Yes.
See all the makeup?
Yep.
Okay. Do the eyes look sad to you? They're very sad and hollow. That's why I picked that picture, because I know exactly what outfit I'm wearing in that picture. And I
Yeah.
worked in an office. I was high functioning drug addict by the time I was 15.
Mhm.
Okay. So I still went to school, got my job, got married, blah, 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 blah. That picture, I was dressed to the T on,
Yeah.
everything matched, the shoes, the clothes, the makeup and all that. And that's when I used to curl my hair because I wanted curly hair like my sisters. I'm
Of
the only one
course,
with
right?
straight hair. Now I love it. So I used that particular picture because if you saw me, I looked like I knew what I was doing. I
Yeah.
was dressed nice. I worked in a professional office. I got promotions and raises, even though I was really strung out on drugs and a lot of drinking and stuff. I unfortunately got married during that period and had my son during that period and got a divorce during that period. So I say my son's a good man, not because of me, but in spite of me, because of God. Although I was a good mom in a lot of ways, I wasn't in a lot of other ways. So that was my time to weep.
Yeah.
All
So
those
that
years.
was a lot of years of feeling that way. And even if you didn't look at, even if they couldn't tell it,
Yeah.
there's a
Well,
message.
and that's the thing, I hid behind the alcohol and drugs to help me not feel the pain of all that, not ever dealing with it, not even giving a voice to it, or saying how it made me feel. And I'll share with that later, how some of that, even though I've gone through therapy and stuff, there's certain things that can trigger me.
Sure.
And so,
Yeah.
that was my time to weep, from the
Yeah.
time my parents got a divorce until I was 30.
Yeah.
Okay. In 30, I had an experience that I had a foreboding. I know now it was God. At the time, I didn't know who God was or what he was about, or if he even knew me. But I was gonna go out drinking again, and there was a big foreboding, which I won't go into great detail, but he showed me that I needed to make a change, or else I knew either something horrible was going to happen if I went to the bar that night. Either I was going to drunk drive and hurt somebody, or I was going to get hurt because I put myself in bad situations. I ended up having this little argument in my head, almost like two little gremlins on a shoulder, like this one saying, go to a 12-step meeting. I don't want to go by myself. You're going to the bar by yourself. And there was like this little argument, and I listened to the other voice and went to a 12-step meeting. And that was the beginning of who I am today.
Wow.
Sparrow's journey has definitely had its ups and downs, and a lot of downs were experienced in that season of her life. I really appreciate her willingness to be vulnerable and share. I appreciate your willingness to listen. I hope that you found some encouragement that even though that was a really dark period of her life, that is not where her story ends. Tune in next time for part 2 of her story that goes through her time of seeking and ends where she is now in a time to dance. The joy and freedom of her childhood is back, and she has a new perspective on life and even of her time of weeping. See you next time.